Welcome, everybody. This is the CAC meeting for August 2nd, 2021. It's our monthly August meeting. I would like to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us tonight. The Spanglish translation is provided as an accommodation for our meetings if requested in advance. If you are seeking Spanish accommodations, please contact the CAC secretary at 707-565-1534. I don't believe that we have had any requests for Spanish language accommodations this evening, but certainly if something comes up, please bring that to my attention and we'll do what we need to do. Regarding public comments at our CAC meetings, members of the public are free to address the CAC. Public comments should fall under the subject matter jurisdiction of the CAC, as noted in our founding documents. Public comment is also time limited. Time limitations are at the discretion of the director and chair and may be adjusted to accommodate all speakers. For tonight's roll call and our agenda, I'm going to ask our Vice Chair, Lorena Barrera, to please take the roll for today's meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to call Councilmember Bailey. Looks like she's here.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Estrada is unable to join us tonight. Councilmember Flores. Thank you. Councilmember Landaverde is also unable to join us. Councilmember Roman Diaz. Councilmember Solomon.
Present.
Councilmember Woods.
Present.
I'm Vice Chair Barrera and Chair Zelig.
I'm present as well.
Thank you.
I just wanted to see, I didn't hear, is Ms. Roman Diaz joining us? I don't see her on. No, she's not. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much for taking the role for today. Next, we are going to go to our agenda review. If there is anybody who has any corrections to tonight's agenda or anything that needs to be modified for today's agenda, does anybody have any comments on that? Okay, I see no hands raised. Then we will go now to looking at last month's agenda from July 12th, 2021. And for approval of the minutes, I am looking through, I see one thing that does need some correction that was brought to my attention under the July 12th, 2021 agenda item number 2, the introduction of reappointed CAC members. We do have Ms. Estrada listed as Dora Barrera. She has asked for that to be corrected to Estrada. Aside from that, I do not see any changes that need to be made. Are there any other CAC members with any corrections or changes that they are requesting or see necessary from the last month's minutes? No? Okay, I see no affirmative responses. What I will do then is open up the agenda item number 1 to public comment. This is going to be opened up for public comment solely on the items in agenda item number 1, which is our agenda review for tonight's agenda or approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any attendees who wish to give public comment on this last agenda item or the first agenda item from last month? Okay, I see no public comment. Does a CAC member have a motion to approve the minutes of July 12th, 2021?
To approve.
And Lorena Barrera has a motion to approve. Is there a second of that motion?
Sorry, move to approve with the amended change to the name. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Barrera.
And
And Ms. Woods, you are seconding that motion?
yes.
Great. Councilmember Woods is seconding that motion. Now for a vote. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes of July 12th, 2021, please say aye and raise your hands. Aye.
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 And any opposed to the approval of last month's minutes, please say nay and raise your hands. And any abstentions? Okay, I hear no negative responses and no abstentions. We will move on to agenda item number 2. I would like to introduce one of our newly appointed CAC members. She is from the 4th District, appointed by Council Member James Gore, and I'm sorry, Board of Supervisor rather, James Gore, and that is Marcy Flores. Marcy, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Marcy, is there anything that you would like to share or tell the CAC and the public about yourself, or anything to say to introduce yourself for our CAC and the public tonight?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I grew up in Geyserville, a little bit north from most of you, and I studied Chicano Latino Studies and Early Childhood Education at Sonoma State University. I have worked at several districts in Sonoma County, working with youth and families, parents, and through migrant education, and currently the Director of Academic Development at Corazon Healdsburg. And I look forward to continuing my work in the community through this council. So it's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. The other person who was reappointed for CAC membership was myself. I was also reappointed by Supervisor James Gore out of the 4th District. I am looking forward to being a part of the CAC for the next period, the next 2-year period. It has been an honor to serve as your CAC chair and to be a member of the CAC with all of you. And I very much look forward to advancing our goals with the sheriff over the next 2 years. I was thrilled to learn that the sheriff has accepted at least one of our policies that was recommended in our most recent recommendations. That was announced by Director Navarro in her most recent newsletter. And I look forward to working with all of you in the coming years to advance some additional community-driven, appropriate recommendations for the sheriff that they will hopefully accept and to make our community safer. Thank you. I'm now going to open up to public comment on this section only. It's for this agenda item only. If you have any comments about the appointment of Marcy Flores or the reappointment of Evan Zelig to the CAC, if there's anybody who wishes to make public comment, we will allow 2 minutes at this time if you wish to do so. And I see nobody raising a hand to give public comment on this agenda item. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 3. This is the main item on our agenda for this week. We will be discussing the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department hiring, diversity, and discipline procedures and information. We do have 3 guests joining us as panelists for this evening's presentation. The first presenter, I'm going to give a brief bio of all 3, and then we'll go through and speak with our presenters. Our first presenter is Margot Frazier. Margot Frazier is nationally known as an expert in law enforcement and corrections, having served as a subject matter expert for the United States Department of Justice, the Special Litigation Section in numerous cases. She served as the elected sheriff of Travis County, Texas, from 1997 through 2004. She was the first woman to hold that office, where she started as a deputy more than 2 decades earlier. She is currently the vice president of the board of directors for the National Association for Civilian Oversight and Law Enforcement, NACOL, which many of us are also members of. The next speaker that we have is Marina Luna. Ms. Luna is the Administrative Services Officer for the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office's Personnel Bureau. She was born and raised in the Roseland area of Santa Rosa. She has 1 brother, and her parents reside in the home she was born in. She is a 1997 graduate of Elsie Allen High School, of their first graduating class. She thereafter received an associate's degree in general studies from the Santa Rosa Junior College and a Bachelor of Arts degree in liberal studies from Sonoma State University. She manages the Personnel Bureau, including a staff of 2 sergeants, 9 background investigators, and 2 administrative staff members. The third and final presenter that we will have this evening is Scott Dunn. Scott Dunn is a retired lieutenant who works as an extra help background investigator for the Sheriff's Office here in Sonoma County. Lieutenant Dunn was born and raised in the Bay Area. He received an associate's degree from Chabot College. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Chabot College in Park Technology and a BS degree in resource management from the California State University of Sacramento. He was the first person in his family to receive a college education. He moved to Sonoma County when he was hired as a park ranger in 1981 for the regional parks. In 85, he began his career as a deputy sheriff for the Sonoma County office. During his career, he worked a variety of assignments, including patrol, marine enforcement unit, helicopter unit, crime scene investigations, environmental crimes, and the tactical team. He was promoted up through the ranks as detective, sergeant, and ultimately lieutenant. He served as the department's team captain during the agency's participation for the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life for 10 years. Thank you to our presenters for joining us. And I guess we'll get right into it. And I'd like to ask Ms. Frazier if you would like to give your presentation to our CAC panel and to the public joining us. Ms. Frazier, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Go ahead, and if you would, please let us know a little bit about this information that you prepared for us for tonight's presentation.
Okay. When I was contacted, I was told that the group was meeting and was trying to work with the Sheriff's Office, obviously, to meet the challenges of recruiting these days in law enforcement and corrections, and also to look at the issues of being able to make sure that your workforce is reflective not only of your community, but also of the people with whom these officers and deputies would become involved in and deal with. I had suggested, as you know, I'm a former sheriff for Travis County, and faced a lot of the same sort of challenges in the fact that when I took over as sheriff, we had a huge staffing shortage. And we particularly had a staffing shortage in the areas of women, ethnic and racial minorities, the LGBTQ community. And so we tried to really look at our recruiting efforts and see what we were doing to make sure that we were reaching out to people in the broadest manner to hopefully be able to recruit the folks that we wanted. One of the things that I figured out very quickly from my past experience, having been in charge of recruiting back when I had been a captain with the Sheriff's Office many years before, and also having been a partner in a law firm that had the same sort of goals, was the fact that you have to go to people, reach out and go to places where the folks you're trying to find are. So in addition to the normal sort of go be part of a, there are 50 tables at a recruiting fair and you hope somebody will stop by your table, we decided instead we were going to take the message to the people. And so we contacted a variety of community partners and asked them if we could come, instead of being part of job fairs, to actually be the solo act to be able to go out and reach out to those communities. So we set up, for example, we have a large Indian American community in Austin. And so we arranged to be at their annual celebration of the independence of India and to have information at that table. Same thing with some of our members of the Vietnamese community, realizing that on Saturdays, particularly in Austin, We have an area where there are shops that particularly cater to that community, and to be able to bring our recruiting materials to them. Same thing, reached out to some of the members who wanted to particularly be able to, we have a large Hispanic population in Austin. We want to be able to reach out to the Hispanic population, particularly the Spanish speaking population. And so we went to, there was several of our Catholic churches, but one in particular that had a large Hispanic following, particularly they had some masses that were held in Spanish. And so we got permission to have a table just set up outside, didn't interfere with the service, so that people coming by us could do, learn those things. Same thing with some of the ministers at the larger congregations that primarily had African-American attendees, that we were able to reach out to them. And somebody said, well, you don't know that those folks are at church. And I'm like, yeah, but their mama and their aunts are, who have been telling them to get a job. And so by reaching out to them to be able to do that. So we use the churches. We particularly needed to recruit female officers and deputies. And so we went again. Softball's a big thing in Austin, and we would go and set up a shade with some water and things at the softball tournaments and at the women's basketball games in order to reach out to these groups. So the message being that instead of waiting for people to come to you, going to the people that you're wanting to recruit. We're clearly glad and happy to speak to anybody who wanted to speak to us at those events. We weren't by any way being exclusive of the people, but we were reaching out to them. We were the first agency, and this may, in today's day and age, may seem strange, but we were the first agency ever to have a recruiting table at our annual Pride event back in 1997. That was like radical at that period of time. So again, reaching out to folks, the message, besides the fact that we want to, is also that we want to be part of this community. And with that, I'll kind of stop there so that people can make other presentations, and also certainly be glad to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I actually have a question before we go on to our next panelist. Ms. Frazier, what was the success of going out to these places and reaching out to these different groups? Were you successful in recruiting people from the Pride recruitment or from the churches? Did you find that the going to the people was met with success, that you were actually getting those people interested and ultimately applying for those positions?
We did. We had great success. We were able to fill. We got to the point where we had, a waiting list for people to be able to be screened and to go to the academy. And part of it too is the fact that you also have to recognize and to say to that community, we're not just wanting to do window dressing. That, sometimes acknowledging your sins of the past and the fact that inviting them to come in and be an active part of it. I'll tell you, it doesn't work if people don't see that, if people don't get hired. They don't want to just be a number so you can say, well, we tried, but they couldn't pass, say the physical exam. We found that there were a number of people that had difficulty with that, particularly some of the females. And people were very intimidated by the fact that we looked at our exam to figure out what really was necessary and what was not. But we held on Saturday mornings at the academy, anybody could come and run the obstacle course and get assistance to help them be able to pass the test. Because some of it is just, you can't show, you can, but you show up the very first time and never seen that course, you're probably not going to do very well. And so we had people that would teach them, tutor them. Some people, quite frankly, needed to get in better shape. And we worked with them on what they could do to get there. You know, I will tell you, some of the pastors made a deal. You can have a table, but the sheriff herself has to come and speak you know, in the welcome remarks, which of course, you know, I was an elected official. I was happy to take that invitation, but it also offered me an opportunity to be able to talk to people about why I knew it was important to have not to have limited seats at the table, but to make the table bigger so that we could have people who represented our community and those that we were seeking to serve.
Good, thank you. Councilmember Solomon, I see you're raising your hand with a question.
Yeah, I was curious if you also tracked retention of those groups where you did outreach and you had them apply and they did get the job, and I'm curious what the retention rates were like going forward.
Absolutely.
Time there. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things we found too is that it worked best as people were going through this process, because often it's a job like no other. I mean, although we found it didn't have to take as long as it did. And one of the things that we would tell people is, you can imagine, I'm in Austin, Texas. So we competed with the Austin Police Department, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and, you know, there were probably literally 50 different law enforcement agencies in the same jurisdiction, with the different state agencies and cities and all of those subsets. And so one of the things that we tell people was that we weren't going to tell you you'd be in an academy class 2 years from now, like the police department was doing, that we could promise them that we would get them through the process and they would be in academy within 3 months. And that was appealing to people, because you usually aren't looking for a job until you need a job. And so we had people that were assigned to keep them engaged. And then also an important part, and I will tell you from some work I'm doing right now with, I'm a court-appointed monitor over 2 jail systems that are greatly in need of reform. And both of them have horrendous staffing issues. But one of the jails, I finally have gotten them to buy into this approach that we use, and they're finding great results. And that is not only having a field training or a jail training program, but continuing to have somebody that those officers or deputies, as they find themselves perhaps struggling with the job, that mentors them and that they can turn to outside of, you know, nobody wants to go, well, you know, usually people don't want to go to the supervisor and admit, I'm having a problem. You know, I'm having trouble setting boundaries, I'm having trouble how to deal with inmates, but having somebody outside their chain of command that they can go to help be supportive of them. And this particular agency has seen a great reduction in these sort of turnover.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll come back with some more questions I know CAC members will have, but next I'd like to turn the presentation over to Marina Luna. And Ms. Luna, if you could please, welcome to the CAC, and please let us know the information that you've prepared for us.
Great, thank you for having us today. Retired Lieutenant Scott Dunn is going to be assisting me with this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I haven't done this before, so we'll see if this works. Let me just get on here. Can you guys can't see it quite yet, can you?
Not quite yet.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. Well, now I'm having technical difficulties, of course. Adriana, are you able to share it for me?
It wouldn't be a Zoom call if we had no technical difficulties.
Right?
How true.
Okay, let's see. Oh my goodness, okay. Let me know if you see anything.
I'm seeing something now.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Are you sharing it or not?
If you can share it, that'd be great. For some reason, it's not working on my end.
Okay, sorry.
And I can just get started without it, just for the sake of time. Okay. I'll go ahead and do that, Adriana, until maybe we can get it going. But I'm going to just go ahead and start and give an overview of the recruitment and interview process for the sheriff's office. And hopefully we can make that pretty short and sweet and go into some of the details about our background investigation process, which I know a lot of you had questions on, which we are completely prepared to answer. So basic overview of recruitment and interview process. We work with County Human Resources for all of our recruitments at the sheriff's office. I am the HR liaison for the sheriff's office, and so I will request a recruitment from county HR and work in developing a recruitment plan. Oh, there it is. There we go, there we go. Perfect, thank you.
Adriana, do you have the ability to click on the little icon on the bottom row that looks like a window screen? Like a little pull down window shade? Just 3 more over. That one there.
Okay.
Click on that. That should turn it to full screen.
I'm not able to do it though. I mean, I click on it, nothing happens.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't know why this is so hard. Sorry.
Oops.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right, I'll keep going. So we request a recruitment from county HR, and county HR will work with myself in developing a recruitment plan. And that includes discussing what the critical components are of the position, the ideal candidate profile, and also looking at the diversity data for the position that we're recruiting for to see if we can expand those for advertising purposes. HR will provide a list of recommended advertising for the position, and we advertise our positions on social media, like our Facebook and Instagram accounts. Once we get the recruitment solidified, we will post that announcement on HR's website, and that is where applicants will submit their application, and everything is done in accordance with our civil service rules. Applications are submitted directly to county HR. I know there might have been a question about the like the EEO information. County HR does not share that information with any of the departments as far as the applications go. So by the time we actually receive a list from county HR, it is just the applicants' names and their applications. We're not entitled to receive any information regarding the demographic of the candidate pool. So anyway, applications are, all applications are evaluated by, there we go, by county HR. And county HR will review each application to ensure the applicant meets the minimum qualifications for the position. And applicants that don't qualify for the position, their process stops there. So with each position, an application appraisal, or each recruitment, an application appraisal is conducted by County Human Resources. The first level is always to review that the applicant meets the minimum qualifications for the position. And we will have a recruitment typically on the continuous recruitments. We have a deputy sheriff 2 lateral recruitment, correctional deputy 2 lateral, and a dispatcher lateral recruitment that we have ongoing, as well as helicopter pilot. Those continuous recruitments, generally speaking, all the applicants have to do is submit an application, meet the minimum qualifications, and HR will refer the list to us so that we can conduct our interview process. So that is one process. And then there's another process that we utilize, which is the application appraisal process. And those are for some of the entry-level positions where we are basically providing raters to county HR, subject matter experts typically, to review and evaluate the applications submitted by our applicants. And then those are essentially ranked and placed on an eligibility list according to HR civil service rules. And that list is referred to us in accordance with civil service rules based on the number of vacancies that we have. Some of the positions we have recruited for require a written exam. Usually that is the deputy sheriff 1 or the deputy sheriff trainee position, the correctional deputy 1 position, and then our entry-level dispatcher position. Those do have a written exam component to them. Those exams are conducted by county HR, and they establish, again, an eligibility list as from the scores, and we receive the applications for department selection interviews. So everything is conducted in accordance with civil service rules. So once HR sends an employment list to us for interviews, their process stops and the department selection interview process picks up. So we will schedule interviews for all of the folks that have been referred to us. We utilize a structured oral board interview process. We have typically 3 panel members, all typically subject matter experts, and we like to have a diverse panel of folks on our interview panels. For the deputy sheriff and correctional deputy interviews, we follow post-commission regulations. So we ask questions that are job related under the 6 factors that are required by post. So that is experience, problem solving ability, communication skills, interest and motivation, interpersonal skills, and community involvement and awareness. All of our questions are typically competency, behavior-based, and situational-based interview questions. For some of our positions, we do have a skills test. So like our helicopter pilot position, which we're recruiting for right now, there is a skills test that is part of our interview and selection process. And we do have a skills test for our dispatcher position as well, entry-level dispatcher. From that interview process, our applicants are then placed on a list in order of basically highest score to lowest score. And that is what we utilize to place our applicants into our background investigation process.
If we go to the slide that says the background on the top. Next one, there we go.
There we go. Hi, guys. So just so you know, I'm sharing it for you. So let me know where you want me to go.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. So I'll take it from here at this point. So once we've got the rank list, the background investigation begins, essentially. The background investigator is assigned. And so just a brief what the background is. It's a detailed review and investigation of the candidate's personal history to see if they meet our specified criteria. And the criteria that we use is established by the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, POST. And they have what's referred to as dimensions that we'll cover in a second here. But just to let you know, for anyone that's interested, if you were to do an internet search of California POST, P-O-S-T, you'll find a number of documents that POST has made public, which includes the background investigators manual that they use when they're training background investigators, and we use as a reference guide. The variety of different questionnaires that POST provides for the background process, detailed information on screening processes, whether it be medical or other criteria, and then what qualifiers, disqualifiers, and if you're interested in the even the curriculum for law enforcement academy students, the student workbooks are all listed there. 40-something different workbooks of all different topics. And so it's an interesting read to see what our officers are being trained in. So we can go to this next slide. So in regards to California POST dimensions that I mentioned, just briefly, we're looking at moral character, so their integrity, which one of the biggies here is honesty, impartialness, things of that nature. We're also looking at impulse control, attention to safety. So this could include driving practices, impulse control, anger management, things of that nature. We also look at handling stress and diversity, another dimension. And these include substance abuse and other risk-taking behavior, stress tolerance. So looking at looking for positive attitudes and even temper, but we're also looking for other things that may be of concern in those arenas. And then confronting and overcoming problems, obstacles, and adversity. So how are they with problem-solving, decision-making processes? Next slide, please. So the next few dimensions include work habits. So conscientiousness. So pretty much what makes a good employee: dependability, accountability, responsibility, things of that nature, even down to taking proper care of equipment, things of that nature. We're looking at initiative, drive, conscientiousness. Another dimension is the area of interaction with others is interpersonal skills. Their social sensitivity, social interest and concern, tolerance, self-confidence, things of that nature. Can they work in a team? Another dimension is intellectually based abilities. So again, their decision-making and judgment, analyzing a problem and solving a problem, their ability to adhere to policies and regulations, appropriate response behavior, things of that nature. We also look at their learning ability. So do they have the ability to learn skills and a variety of different tasks? Or do they have the ability to learn? We do a lot of computer-based activities. So can they pick up a computer and work from that? We're also looking at communication skills, oral communication and written communication. So these are the dimensions that POST has established. We use it as the backbone for our decision process on whether or not somebody qualifies as they go through the background process. And when we have someone that doesn't make it through the process, we actually need to identify which of these dimensions they did not meet. Next slide, please. So the background process, as it begins, the applicants the candidate is initially given a variety of paperwork and usually given about a 2-week time period to complete things. And one of the first documents, when they return and the background really begins, is an autobiography that they've written themselves. It's usually about 1 or 2 pages. So this gives the background investigator a snapshot of the individual's history, and we ask them to include, information about their parents, how their situation was growing up, what kind of family structure they were in, things of that nature. So we're looking for some intimate detail there. They also complete a personal history statement. This is a document that's on the Post website. It's 25 pages long for the peace officer one. And that document we jokingly refer to as an application on steroids. So it's basically a lot of similar questions that you might find on a job application, but in much greater detail. And then there's also another document that they fill out that's a personal history questionnaire that we've created that is 28 pages long and goes into greater detail about their personal history. And so the applicant provides these documents. The background investigator sits down with the applicant and spends a significant amount of time reviewing the document, going line by line. And these documents include contact information for friends, family references, coworkers, supervisors, current past roommates, property managers, a mix of different people. Also includes information on their education and any specialized training that they've received, and particularly anything that might be pertinent towards a job. Includes information on current and past residence locations, information on their current and past employment. And then both these documents also have several pages of questions that cover a wide range of topics, from criminal to traffic to civil to financial situations, and even affiliations with different types of groups. Groups that may be, say, as Hell's Angels, or other types of groups that might be counter to law enforcement. And so we're looking for their honesty on all of this, and that we stress that they really need to be honest and forthcoming in these documents, because if we find that they were dishonest or did not provide detail that they should have provided, that itself is grounds for disqualification. So we're really serious about this. We stress full honesty, full disclosure. Next slide, please. After meeting with the background investigator and going through all these documents, then they meet up with our polygrapher to go through what we refer to as a pre-employment polygraph. And the polygraph examiner that we use, or actually we have 3 of them that we contract to. And I believe the current cadre, all of them at one time in their life have been peace officers, and they're certified polygraph examiners now. Some of them even do background investigations, as their own independent businesses. So they're very knowledgeable on the process and very good at what they do. And so they then sit down with the applicant, review the documents again with them in detail. And it's not like what you may see in regards to polygraphs on TV. They don't just hook somebody up and start firing questions at them. They spend a significant amount of time. The process itself is nearly 3 hours. So they spend probably about close to 2 hours of that time going through the applications and going through all these documents. And then they get down to the point where they actually hook them up to the polygraph, and they're asking simple yes/no questions. So an example might be, if an applicant admitted to stealing a candy bar from a store when they were 16 years old during the earlier conversation, then when they're hooked up to the polygraph machine, the examiner would say, other than the candy bar that you stole when you were 16, have you stolen anything else? And so they're just looking for yes/no questions. After the interview, the polygraph examiner reviews the polygraph, and the polygraph works off of a variety of physiological responses to questions and answers. And so the polygraph examiner then writes a detailed report submitting their findings on the process. The polygraph is not an absolute end all. It's one of many resources or tools that we use. And in fact, even if we have a situation where maybe it's an inconclusive response, we may actually allow the applicant to be examined by another polygraph examiner, where we'll do an item-specific exam. Okay, next slide, please. The next phase of the background, the individual submits fingerprints to the system. They're searched local, state, and federally, looking for criminal records. We also do an automated search in addition to the fingerprint search for criminal records. And if need be, we've actually had applicants who have spent a significant amount of time out of the country. We've contacted international law enforcement agencies and conducted criminal searches of their systems as well. We will contact law enforcement agencies where the candidate resides, works, and where they've gone to school, any other place that they've worked or gone to school over their time, past and present. And we'll reach out to see what contacts those agencies have had with the individual. And it could be that they're a reporting party on a 911 call, reporting a traffic accident, or it could be that they're, a drunk driver. So we're looking at all varieties of contacts. Back to the slide. Okay. Armed with the candidate's responses to the questionnaires, the background investigator, one of our goals is to validate the responses that the person has given us. And see if there's any discrepancies. We, in this process, we're contacting current and former employers, neighbors, friends, acquaintances, and others that we can seek out. Oftentimes, we're seeking out people that aren't just provided to us by the applicant. So we will contact the references and see if they have any other references to give us. And sometimes we'll just dig even further and try to find our own references of individuals that this person has had some contact with. Our investigation also includes visiting the candidate's home, actually being in their home, in their room, and seeing what their home turf is like. We also contact the neighborhood and the neighbors in the neighborhood, and even former neighbors in some cases. If somebody's been in a neighborhood for a short term, we'll go to their previous neighborhood. We'll also do credit checks, military records checks, social media check, and internet searches to see if we can find anything else. And then, there's a variety of other sources that we'll check if applicable to the particular applicant. Next slide, please. After the investigator's done with the report, they put together, or with the investigation, they put together a report that goes up for administrative review. And so this is reviewed by the personnel manager, Marina in this case, and designated command staff above Marina. And if the applicant meets our criteria, then they're provided a conditional job offer. CJO is the term that we use, or we discontinue the investigation. So that decision is made. The conditional job offer is essentially our offer of employment conditional that they complete the remaining components of the selection process. Next slide. And the CJO phase here, we get into the medical aspects. And by law, we can't get into this phase until somebody's been given a conditional job offer. And so this phase includes medical testing, physical medical testing, and for the variety of applicants that we have, obviously a deputy sheriff or correctional deputy, it's going to be more extensive, more detailed. Other individuals, other job classes, it's not as detailed. There is a medical history questionnaire that the applicant fills out. That's also can be viewed on the Post website. We don't receive that, but that goes to the applicant provides that to our medical contractor. In some cases, a physical ability and performance test is done for the applicant. So again, deputy sheriff and correctional deputies, those go through the performance testing. And again, another outside contractor does that. For dispatcher, deputy sheriff, and correctional deputy, they also go through a psychological evaluation. And this is done by a psychologist who is specially trained in law enforcement evaluations. And they also have to meet certain criteria for post. And so they conduct a very extensive process that can take usually a minimum of about 5 hours, sometimes up to 8 hours. It includes a very extensive written exam, and then followed by an interview by the psychologist. And so the psychologists, after their exam, they submit a report to us as well, stating their findings of the individual. There's also another personal history questionnaire that the individual fills out, and this one is primarily on medical aspects, and basically have they been honest about medical health things that they've reported, and then substance use and abuse. Just an example here, we can, in the earlier phases, we can talk to an applicant about criminal aspects or employment aspects in regards to drug and alcohol use or violations. We can't ask about how much they drink or anything that might be, show addictions or anything of that nature till we reach this phase of the background. So this questionnaire goes into greater detail about substance use and abuse to see if we are dealing with somebody that might have potential addiction issues. And then this questionnaire is also used by our polygraph examiner for a second polygraph for deputy sheriffs, correctional deputies, and dispatchers. Then these documents are reviewed, a report is put together, and we submit this up for review by the admin, and then also a final interview is lined up with one of the assistant sheriffs for the peace officer positions and several other positions, or if it's some of our non-sworn positions, it may be conducted by our chief financial and administrative services officer. So that's that aspect of the background. Next slide. Okay, so that kind of runs through what I've got on the background process.
Mhm.
Raina, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I actually, yes, not necessarily to the background process, but I do want to touch on the recruitment efforts for as far as diverse recruiting, trying to build diversity within our organization. I had sent a document over to Carlene. I'm not sure if you can share that with the group.
I am attempting to do that now.
I'm not sure why my computer is not able to share. Maybe it's user error, but I wanted to highlight some of our recruitment efforts where we post our job advertisements, our career advertisements, some of the job fairs that we have attended over the years. It's been quite the struggle during this pandemic to get out and talk to people and meet people. I will say that. So the past year and a half, it's been quite the struggle. It's not quite the same doing Zoom interviews or Zoom career fairs than it is going out and getting to see people face to face and meet them and shake their hands, right? So, but hopefully we can, there we go. So county HR, we work with county HR in our recruitment efforts. County HR will place a lot of our advertising for us, with the exception of our social media, which we run ourselves. So these are some of the job fairs and events that county HR has attended, and they've included all of our job postings that we have at their events and job fairs. They do have standard advertising for all county departments, La Voz, Los 100, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Sonoma County. That's where they place a lot of our advertisements as well, Latino service providers and La Prensa. HR's standard for advertising for the Sheriff's Office includes PORAC Magazine, International Association of Women Police, Association of Public Safety Communications Officials, and then the Latino radio stations, Froggy, Exitos, and other bilingual public radio. So as far as our events that we've attended, in addition to our strong social media presence, and you can see below, Roseland University Prep Career Day, Roseland Elementary Career Fair Days. We really try to get out to the schools and send our folks out to the schools just to talk about law enforcement in general. Obviously, some of these elementary schools they're a little young to apply for our positions, but really it's just getting out there and engaging the community and getting our deputies out there and other staff members out there. So Martin Luther King Day, a day at Community Baptist Church, Travis Air Force Base Career Days. So a lot of these, National Night Out at the Santa Rosa Target store. So there's a lot of places where we advertise our positions, and a lot of our advertising most recently, because of the pandemic, obviously we haven't been able to get out and go to some of these career days, but we have been doing a lot of our advertising on social media. And what we hope is our employees will share our posts. So if they follow us on Instagram, or if they follow us on Facebook and we post a position, we're hoping that our employees will share that on their page and let their friends know, their family members know about our positions that we're recruiting for. But our advertising also comes in a different form. It's not just, oh, here's this job, apply for the position. It's doing things like a day in the life of a correctional deputy. And I don't know if any of you follow us on our Facebook and Instagram pages, but we've done a lot of that recently with our correctional deputy positions. This is, our employee, this is a day in the life type of thing. We've done that with our dispatch positions as well. So it's really just getting the community to connect in a way with our employees and see what it is that they do. So that is that. And we're prepared to answer questions. I know I had received a list of questions from folks in advance, and we have answers to those questions. I want to make sure I answer your questions. So did I send that document? Did I send that to you, Carlene?
Oh, I only received the diversity advertising document.
Okay.
I know that this is Evan Zelig. Thank you for that presentation, Ms. Luna and Mr. Dunn. I know that we did receive the questions that were asked, but I don't believe we received any written responses. Before we ask you to kind of go over those, I do see that Councilmember Solomon has a question.
Okay.
Mr. Solomon, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you.
Sure.
I was curious if you could all speak to what attributes a candidate might have that would rule them out like immediately.
Did you want to take that, Scott?
Just not an exhaustive list, but just like an example. Some examples would be interesting.
Well, we've actually had some candidates that shortly after sitting down with them and going through the process, the next stop was taken them to jail. We've had people divulge child molestation, things, child pornography. Those are our obvious red flags. So we've had that extreme too. But people with very poor work performance histories, people that have extreme at-risk behavior. And when I talk about at-risk, I'm not, talking like at-risk sports. I'm talking about, substance use and abuse. Some of the maybe they haven't grown up, that they what might be recognized as a teen prank, but they're in their 20s and 30s still living that type of mentality. A lot of the items that might come up would be criminal behavior that's recent, behavioral behavior that's not appropriate for the position. People that have anger management issues, low stress tolerance, things of that nature. There are definitely the applicants that we can sit down with and in short order, disqualify them. Sometimes I had an individual who wasn't anything particular that she had done, but her boyfriend of choice is a convicted felon, parolee, who had recently been rearrested for threatening to stab a deputy. And, she and I talked about this in great detail, and my recommendation, because she definitely wanted to come back, was she needed to gain distance away from this individual and not associate with them. And so time and distance can heal some of these things, but in her case, she turned around and married him. So, she's not coming back. So those are just a few that right off the top of my head.
Great, thank you very much. I have a question for Mr. Dunn, for Lieutenant Dunn. When the Sheriff's Department is looking at all of these background checks and doing all of the, the standard criminal checks, the military checks, jobs, everything, how far back are you looking as far as getting that information? And is there a kind of a washout period where you look at and you say, okay, anything before this, we really don't care about. We're just concerned about the more recent stuff. What are the criteria as far as how far back you look and where you're looking?
And that's actually one of the questions that was sent to us. And in brief, there are some questions, or some of those questions or items in their history that if they've ever done it, that's a disqualifier. But others go back to, maybe about a time frame of 5 years, 10 years, or age 15. So, and on the application, on the particularly the post personal history statement, it actually says, and even on our questionnaire, it asks them to go back to this certain period. And then even if somebody says that they did do something, and it's within a time period, that's not necessarily a disqualifier. It's how long ago was it? How was it mitigated? Has there been a reoccurrence? So did they learn from it? Did they grow up from it? And what's the chance that they're going to repeat it? And so we look at behavior patterns too, not just a single act, but certain aspects. We look at how old were they when they did it, and how much time has gone by. And so it does vary question per question. So our personal history questionnaire is not available online, but the post personal history statement is. and you can, get an idea of some of the questioning and how long we ask them to go back in their minds.
Thank you. I see a hand raised from Councilmember Bailey.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. A couple of questions is, one, as we've been doing this work, we've had the opportunity to work with or have presentations by local city law enforcement. And I wanted to ask, first of all, what do you think draws someone to want to be in the sheriff's department, to serve in the sheriff's department versus their local, local city police? And then secondly, more questions about internal culture. One of the things that I always say is you can recruit, but if there's not a certain culture that makes people feel comfortable or that may be an environment where they want to work at, I want to talk about that. Like, what does that look like internally? Because you can recruit, but if I go to a table and there's a certain energy, or when I'm out in public and I know sheriffs are in the space, that might not be as prone to want me to work in that particular force. So one, what does that look like in terms of internal culture? And then what do you think draws people, but particularly those disenfranchised or those less served groups, to want to even work within the sheriff's department or apply or even consider it a career opportunity?
Okay, let me go back to your first question about why would someone want to become a police officer versus a sheriff's deputy or vice versa? I know one thing that attracted me is I like the variety of career opportunities that the department offers. And just an example is when my bio was read, I worked a Marine unit, a patrol boat function, and I worked the helicopter. That's obviously something that none of our police departments in the area have. So it adds a different element to working the job. And when we're not just doing enforcement all the time, we're doing rescue, our job entails a whole variety of different functions. Some people are turned off by the fact of wanting to do vehicle accident reports. As a deputy sheriff, we don't do vehicle accident reports. Highway Patrol does that, unless we're working a contract city like Sonoma or Windsor. Those deputies do get tasked with that. So there's a variety of different skills that or different job duties and functions that are more attractive. I worked our crime scene investigation unit, which is a sworn detective unit. In other agencies, it's a unit that's maybe pared down and they have designated non-sworn employees that do certain tasks. So for me, it's the variety that the sheriff's office offers, a wider variety of skills or job duties, job functions. On the flip side, some people like the idea of, if you work in the city of Santa Rosa and you need help, you need backup, it's going to be there probably within 30 to 90 seconds. If you're a sheriff's deputy and you're out in the outskirts of the north part of the county or Pine Flat Road out above Geyserville, places like that, and you need help, it could be 20 minutes or more. And I had when I was working the boat, I had cases where I'm out on the boat at the far end of the lake, and if I needed help, the only way help's coming to me is by helicopter, that wasn't on duty at the time, or by another boat being ferried by Army Corps, and deputy being ferried by Army Corps of Engineers, maybe 2 hours later. So, so there's different pros and cons. Your other aspect of your questions, culture. And this is a difficult one because I think a lot of people make assumptions on the culture. What I see here, as far as even like the culture between police department and sheriff's office, is people that with the sheriff's office, you're a little more independent. There's more responsibility put on you because you're going to be further away from supervision, where some people like having more direct supervision. Of quicker response, or the ability of having a sergeant step in and, say ABC, this is what we're going to do, versus, we put a lot on sheriff's deputies to make decisions that are, sometimes paramount to what a sergeant might be making a decision for at the police department. So we put a little bit higher responsibility. And so within our culture, we're looking for people that are, that can handle that additional responsibility. I'm trying to think other aspects of your question here. It's a very, very compounded question. A lot that was going on there. So excuse me for trying to recall all the points to it. Anything else that I can address? Your question that you had for me.
I'll allow my other fellow members to follow up and have questions. I see a lot of hands raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Navarro, I saw your hand raised as well. If you have questions for our panelists.
I do. So I had 2 questions and then it turned into 3 as Lieutenant Dunn was answering Council Member Bailey's question. And so I'm going to start with that one, Lieutenant Dunn. I'm wondering, in terms of, it looks like from the advertising efforts list that Marina shared with us, the department's making efforts to go out to schools and Latino neighborhoods, meetings at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It looks like you were advertising with President Pride at some points. And I'm wondering what the Sonoma County Sheriff's retention looks like for people of color and other underrepresented communities. I think someone asked that question to Ms. Frazier, but I'm wondering, Sonoma County specifically, do you know if there's difficulty retaining underrepresented communities more than other deputy sheriffs?
Marina, did you want to address that?
Yeah, I do. I think we have a bit of a problem retaining people in general. I can't speak to whether it is, if it's just people of color that work for us. In general, we are having a retention problem. And the reason for that is, well, there's a whole host of reasons. We have an extremely high cost of living here in Sonoma County. So we have a lot of employees that are leaving to go to move out of state. We have other agencies that are local that have a better total compensation package than we do. And so in order to make their, $5,000 rent payment, they're going to go work for a different agency that pays more. We have, I had a whole list of things of why our employees are why it's difficult to retain. We do have, we have our correctional deputies, for example. Right now, we have 28 vacancies. We have 28 vacancies for our correctional deputies, and a lot of them have left. We were so close to being almost full. This was probably this time last year. And then all of a sudden, we lost a lot of them to other agencies because we train them up here. They're very well trained, very knowledgeable, and a lot of agencies like that. It is a career path. A lot of our correctional deputies want to be work on patrol. In general, we have less staffing, and we've had budget cuts as well over the past several years. But it is difficult. It's difficult to retain our staff in general, especially our sworn positions.
I wonder. Oh, I didn't want to.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask. I was going to turn to Ms. Frazier and ask whether you know, based on some of your court monitoring work and your experience in different counties, is this something that's common, that difficulty in retention in law enforcement agencies, Ms. Frazier, or do you think that it is something connected to the cost of living in Sonoma County? Sonoma County is not a particularly diverse place. I do know our Latino population is growing to somewhere around 30%, but there's not a lot of people of color here in general. And I think that that can make it a difficult place for people of color to want to move to or live and work. And I'm wondering if you have a sense of retention in general for law enforcement agencies. Is it difficult, or does it depend on the place?
You know, there are a lot of agencies that I work with have issues with retention. You know, one of the things that happens often is that people think they want to be out on patrol. And so if you're working in the jail and they get the opportunity to go out on patrol with a different agency, they'll take that opportunity. My kind of thing always to people was to say, I want you to give me 3 years. And if I lose you after that, because you feel you'll be happier somewhere else, then I can accept that. What we found was that often people, if you could get them to stay for that 3 years, they wouldn't leave, because they recognized that now they had an investment in, you know, in their potential, you know, retirement plan. They were close to that cusp, or already eligible to test for, you know, a promotion, where if they started with a law enforcement agency, they'd have to start over. But you know, I want to say, I think that what's important is that, if I can compare this, use an analogy, it's like your spouse. If you recall how you treated your spouse when you first wanted them to go out on the first date with you, and the attention that you paid, it's the same thing with employees. All that attention you pay to someone when you're recruiting them, you need to continue to pay that attention to them when they're your employee. They need to continue to know that they're an important part of your fulfilling your mission. And you know, when the members ask about mentoring shouldn't just stop, you know, at the 2 or 3 year level. It needs to continue so that people realize that you're invested in their long-term success. And agencies that do that find that they have less turnover. And one of the things we found too is that we had some people who we would tell them, and it depends on, we had civil service also, but under our civil service rules, if you came back within 6 months, you could get your status back. You could pick up where you left. And we told them, be aware of that. So if you get somewhere, you realize, man, this grass isn't so darn green, that you can come back. And we would actually reach out to them at about that 4 month mark. You know, have somebody kind of reach out and say, how's it going? And a lot of times they're like, you know, I'm not really as happy. It's like, you know, you have an option of coming back. And we had quite a few that did. And I will tell you what was amazing was the ones who came back, they never left, you know, because they realized, okay, I'm not making that mistake again.
Thank you. And then I have 2 other questions, and if we can move on to the others if they might take too long to answer. But the first one is, I was wondering, Marina and Scott, Lieutenant Dunn and Ms. Luna, you provided us with a long list of advertising efforts that the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office is making. And it looks like you're doing a lot of proactive work going to schools, you know, and Pride and events by the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And I'm wondering, Ms. Frazier mentioned some more like activity-based recruiting, you know, going to places where people aren't necessarily looking for jobs, but like, for example, if you're looking for women, going to a women's softball league, or, you know, you're looking for, you know, Spanish speakers going to Spanish Mass. or getting out to a Juneteenth celebration to recruit African-American candidates.
Mhm.
Is that something that you've talked about doing, thought about doing, and see value in in Sonoma County?
I see a lot of value in that, actually, and those are great suggestions. And I just want to say that any suggestions that you guys have are completely welcome. We're always looking at ways to do better, right? This is some of the stuff that we've done over the last several years, and we're always looking for ways to do better. So any suggestions that anybody has, please send them forward, and we'll evaluate that. We'll take a look at that and see if we can make it happen. I do think we can do a better job. It's difficult at times. We used to have, and we still kind of do have, this recruitment team that would go out and attend these events. A recruitment team that would be made up of background investigators and employees that are currently working in our corrections units, or our correctional deputies or deputy sheriffs. Will go out to these events to talk to the public and educate them on our process. A lot of folks in the community have questions about our background process. It's usually about our background process, how long it takes. But it is difficult, I think, at times. For example, right now, mandatory overtime hours in the jail, I believe, are at 44 hours a month for the month of August. It's been in the 80s. So these are 80 hours of mandatory overtime in an entire month, in addition to their regular hours worked, right? Right now we're at 80, I think, for our dispatch positions. So a lot of the questions that we're getting from the public are, well, what are the overtime hours like? How often, what type of shifts do I have to work? And we have to be honest with them about it. And it seems like more recently with this generation of folks, the younger generation that are applying, they're looking for more of a work-life balance. And it's difficult to, sell our office when we are, working that many hours of mandatory overtime, right? So it's really trying to sell, keep saying sell, but sell the career, talk about the career. And a lot of our folks that go out into the community are the ones that are working those hours. And anyway, I don't know if that answered your question, but these are great ideas and absolutely open to doing that.
Thank you. And then last question, I was wondering, I know I've mentioned this to Sheriff's Office management in the past, and something that we've talked about a little bit, and there seemed to be some discussion about. Do you know if the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office has had any more discussions about community member on panels? You said that it's important to the office to have subject matter experts, and I was wondering if there's been any more discussion about having, community subject matter experts. People who are, such subject matter experts and being community members, because, I've sat on an interview panel for Santa Rosa Police Department, and I thought it was a really valuable experience for me to see the process of interviewing police officers. And I think it was valuable to them too, to have questions asked from regular community members who aren't law enforcement trained, and to see how the law enforcement officers interact with regular community members. And I'm wondering if there's been any more discussion or movement on that.
I think we're prepared to have more discussion going forward. I think it's difficult for some of our entry level positions. So for more of our entry level civilian positions, I think it would be difficult to coordinate that. But I think there has been some discussion internally. I'm not prepared to answer what direction they're going.
Yeah.
But I know that has come up recently with our, particularly our internal promotions. But I'm not sure where the sheriff is in his discussion about that. But I know it's been discussed. So
great, thank you.
I can add that I know it is a process that's been used for interviews for our chiefs to the contract cities. For Windsor and Sonoma. And we've had interview panels with 7 people on it. And many of them, you know, whether it be a director of public works or a citizen member, I mean, there's been a very large and diverse background group on that. So it's definitely a valid question.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood, I see your hand raised as well with some questions for our panelists.
Yeah, so I just had about 2 questions. My question is, how does the national conversation and data around how law enforcement interact, how law enforcement officers interact with folks of color, how does that inform the retention problem? And then the second question is, how can you recruit folks of color when and if that aspect is not addressed?
Could you repeat your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Did you not hear me?
I didn't catch part of it for some reason on my computer.
So I asked, how does the national conversation and data around law enforcement's interaction with people of color inform the deputy retention problem? And then the second question is, how can you recruit folks of color when this is a systemic issue?
Scott, I'm thinking.
This is because I'm not necessarily involved in retention aspects, but it's probably a question that's best if we can run this up to higher management and get a response from them, and perhaps we can get it back to the group.
Chairman, Mr. Chair, can I weigh in?
Please, Ms. Fraser, please.
Ms. Woods, I think the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that it does have an impact on both recruiting and retention. That when you have, and I never would paint any community as being of one thought, but when you have certain members of the community who feel that they have been suppressed, oppressed, and downright mistreated by law enforcement, whether it be people of color, people of ethnic minorities, LGBTQ folks, that first you need to recognize that that is a battle and an issue that has to be dealt with and acknowledged. Obviously, I ain't nothing but an old white woman. And I've always been a white woman. I also happen to be a lesbian woman who was the first lesbian sheriff elected in the entire United States. And so what I found and said that what we were going to do is we were going to acknowledge the history of past issues that we had had within the sheriff's office and ask people, although it's not up to other to say to folks of color, you need to come solve our problem with folks of color, but to encourage people and let them know that we want them to be part of our correcting and our changing of direction. But you have to talk about it and acknowledge it and be willing to admit the sins of the past, admit the role that not just the current conversation, but quite frankly, the role that law enforcement in its history has had with the suppression. John Lewis didn't get beaten up by a bunch of white, or maybe been white supremacists, but the people that beat John Lewis up on the bridge were law enforcement. We need to acknowledge our role and talk with people about how we need to change that.
Thank you. Vice Chair Barrera, I see your hand raised as well for some questions.
Thank you. Since I was gonna let Nathan go first since he had his hand up for a while. Do you want to go first and then I'll take the last question? Okay, thank you. So I wanted to ask if someone is disqualified at some point for dishonesty, is there a way that another agency can have a record of that if, like, let's say they were disqualified from the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office process, but they applied for Marin County or something, or is that separate? And then my last question is whether the steps for the background check, do they go in that order? And then I have a follow-up question from that.
Let me take one question at a time. As far as the disqualifying information, in fact, that's also one of the questions that came in is if somebody, basically what information do we have from another agency? And agencies do communicate with each other. And part of the questionnaires that the applicants fill out includes what agencies they've applied to.
Okay.
And so they're supposed to check the box on that. And it's kind of a little double check because we have people that will not identify where they've maybe got failed in the background. But when we run their live scan, their fingerprints, it actually will print out a history of who else has run their live scans. So if we find that, say, somebody had applied to XYP, PD, then and they didn't list that, that's one it's a red flag for us. It's like, gee, did they just happen to forget that they did this? But it also gives us an agency to contact and find out why were they disqualified. And along those lines too, if somebody is hired and then moves on from that agency, yes, in regards to the questions that we've had, we do have access to see their background file, their personnel file, disciplinary records, as well as contact employees with that agency and background investigators. And now the second question.
Does the background process that you explained go in the order that you presented it to us?
Pretty much, yes.
So is there ever a possibility that that could be switched? Like, let's say, for example, you look into their social media and do other internet searches and then do the polygraph or something like that? Like, let's say you saw a picture that seems questionable, like a swastika as their background of their room or something. And then you can ask questions like that when you're doing a polygraph instead of doing it the opposite where the polygraph comes first. Just wondering.
That is a good point. When I put together that PowerPoint, as far as the social media, what we do is we actually do kind of two checks on that. When we have the applicant in front of us, the first day that we're meeting with them and we're going over all of that paperwork, we actually have them go on the computer and open up all their social media, their Instagram, all that. So yeah, so right up front, we do check that, but then later on during the process, and there are so many things that we check, something had to end up on that bottom line. We also do internet checks. And so, somewhere in that whole process, we do further internet checks.
Okay.
It's so yes, the social media aspect is definitely day one. And so if we happen to catch something there, but then sometimes like the neighborhood check, the home visit, typically isn't done till late in the process. We don't want to, get into somebody where we're contacting their neighbor saying, hey, your neighbor next door is applying to become a cop. And, then all of a sudden the next day they're not. So we don't want to do that real soon. We want to wait till they're definitely in the process. And that's another point where we might, when either during the home visit or during that neighborhood check that we might see something, that swastika or whatever that comes up. So, and if there is something that comes up, that second polygraph opportunity that we have, even though that second polygraph is primarily geared towards medical aspects and drug issues, we can insert it into that area too. If it's something that we didn't catch on the first part and we want to bring it up again, revisit the topic, we can insert it into that second polygraph.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Solomon, your hand is raised with a question.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Lorena, that was perfect. I'm so glad you went first. That was excellent because my question kind of dovetails off the same topic here. So I love like hearing the disqualification kind of attributes that are kind of being discussed here, and I think that's excellent. And I'm curious how, and I know this is going a little far afield on the topic here, but I'm curious how that same logic is applied to existing employees. So let me give you an example. Someone mentioned swastika or whatever, but let's just say someone's radicalized post hire.
Mhm.
How do you control for that?
Well, is Brandon Cutting on the call? Is he able to hear?
He was, I'm not sure if he still is. He was appearing by phone. He had some bad reception. I'm not sure if he's still on right now. It looks like he might have just disconnected.
Okay.
It looks like we just lost him. I can speak to that a little bit, Nathan. I've had some discussions with management at the sheriff's office about screening current employees for extremism and like you said, how to control for that sort of thing. I can't really get into what has happened, but I can say that I'm told that there are discussions about how to control for that sort of thing. And part of it is discussions with county council, because there's kind of a fine line between people's First Amendment rights, to assembly, et cetera, and making sure that someone's values don't conflict with the sheriff's office values as a whole. So I've been told that's something that they're actively talking about and working on. And it looks like Brandon's back on the call now, and I'll let him follow up. So Lieutenant Cutting, can you hear us?
So I need to let him in as a.
Okay, Adriana's gonna let him in and we can see if he wants to follow up with that as well.
Is this 303 number?
Yes. So Brandon, can you hear us?
Yeah, this is Brandon. I'm here. Sorry.
Hi, Lieutenant Cutting. So Councilmember Solomon was asking about the sheriff's office's efforts to control for extremism or racism in those types of affiliations within the sheriff's department. And we looked to you, but we lost you. And so I went ahead and mentioned to him that it's something that I've brought up with sheriff's office management, and that I couldn't really give any details about what conversations are taking place, but that I've been told that there are ongoing conversations right now regarding how the sheriff's office can actually address those types of issues for current employees. And I mentioned that some of that involves talking to county council to make sure that the sheriff's office is balancing weeding out extremism with people's First Amendment rights and rights to assembly. And so that's right about where I ended when you got back on the call.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. I mean, we have had to take a look at some of the issues more recently and trying to determine we're fairly comfortable where we are right now. But as far as ongoing, because obviously you've heard from both retired Lieutenant Dunn and Marina about the current hiring process. But as far as existing law enforcement, that's a topic that the nation is looking at, and how deep can we get into someone's personal stuff beyond what's reflected upon the department is really the questionable issues that we're trying to dig through now.
Thank you. And maybe Ms. Frazier can actually add to that conversation as well in terms of anything you've seen nationally with how departments are dealing with this type of issue.
Yeah, so there were a lot of departments that were shocked to find that they had members of their agency that partook in the siege on the Capitol on January 6th. And so I had quite a few folks kind of reach out to me, and it was interesting. Some people were kind of taking the position of we shouldn't be asking people those sorts of things. And there is there is the balancing as far as kind of First Amendment versus the fact of being involved in a particular group that advocates, quite frankly, the overthrow of any branch of the government. So there is a balance. You know, I tell folks that social media is a great way to monitor it. Been involved in a couple of cases that I can't necessarily speak to the particulars of with the Department of Justice that had to do with the fact of actually doing looking at some of the social media conduct and some agencies have found that, like, well, the U.S. Border Patrol, there's a kind of infamous Facebook group of the sorts of things that the members of that group that advocate as far as treatment of immigrants is pretty shocking and scary. So there are some things you can do. I encourage people that you need to continue whatever you valued at the time of hiring, you should continue to value. So as far as I'm also, when I was practicing law between being a deputy and a sheriff, I do a lot of employment law for government agencies. And one of the things I told them is that if you don't continue to do some of the things, then it kind of calls into question why you're doing it in the first place. So for example, running credit scores and things like that, officers are, you know, particularly when you come out of jail and people becoming susceptible to bribes, or officers on the street being susceptible, you know, with the money that's involved in the, you know, drug trade, that sort of thing. So continuing to check those things. I will say that one of the things with all the social media, just like there's concern about people's First Amendment rights, and when you're trying to measure qualities that sounded worthy, but quite frankly also incredibly subjective, is that you need to have some awareness of cultural bias that could come into play when you're judging the answer that someone is giving you. So that someone who is, when asked a question as far as, you know, I don't know, simple discussion of people, what they think of others in law enforcement, you might get a very different perspective from someone who has who views or has firsthand experience, or has heard stories their whole life as far as law enforcement being involved in suppression of people's rights. So having some, you know, sensitivity to understand that there can be some cultural bias taking place. We often talk about implicit bias training for officers. It's very important that the people who are involved in recruiting and making that judgment of folks are aware of their own implicit biases and how they come into play.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Woods, I see that you have your hand up for another question.
Yeah, a quick question. So wondering what tools are you all utilizing? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
What tools are you utilizing to kind of evaluate why there is a retention problem with keeping deputies on the job?
Well, I know we are getting information from our exit interview process. So county HR has recently improved their exit interview process. So when an individual leaves or is going to separate from our office, we send that information out to the employee in hopes for them to provide us with some feedback as to what they liked, what they didn't like, what can improve. They have the opportunity to meet with somebody in our command staff upon leaving, or somebody in our county HR department. So that is a tool that we've recently upgraded in order to get that feedback from the employees to find out what it is that is attracting them to a different job and what it is that we can do better here.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You know, if I may, often I find that employees are reluctant when they're leaving to
Mhm.
tell you. And you get a lot of no responses where particularly when it sounds like you're very dependent there in Sonoma County on the county HR, particularly when it's someone who they don't necessarily really cares what your answer is. Where if you have, in one agency that I was working with, they were really trying to get a handle on this retention issue. And so we actually got the chief of corrections to make some calls to people to say, I want to understand why you left me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and he was able to get people to answer the question and to be incredibly blunt and honest about it.
Right.
The other thing I tell you, when you're trying to solve a retention problem, you not only go and talk to the people who left you, but you need to talk to the people who haven't.
Right.
So you need to go to your employees and say, I don't want to put a thought in your mind, but I'm so glad you're here, and tell me why you're here, because I want these other people to be here too. So tell me what you think we're, you know, what we're doing right. And so what often you hear, I mean, you're talking, Selena was talking about the issue with overtime. And often you have a collective bargaining agreement that basically allows folks who have been there longer to opt out of so much overtime. And it falls often on these new recruits where they're really being inundated with it. And there does become a point where you're just exhausted. I mean, it's not good for the staff. It's not good for the public that they're dealing with or the inmates. And so, you know, figuring out, you know, what it is that's kind of driving folks away. And for some people, what they'll say is, I don't mind, you know, I like the money, I don't mind the overtime, but I don't like the unexpected aspect of it. You know, I didn't get to go to my kid's soccer game because I was there. It's that life balance. So there are some places that have become very creative in the way that they schedule overtime and allow people to do some sharing. And you got a lot of young folks who, like when they come in, who perhaps don't have college degrees, but that's something they want to work on. And, you know, I will tell you, that's something we use often. What we found was that our white applicants were more likely to already have their degrees, where other folks didn't. And so one of the things we said to people was, we will work with your schedule and help arrange it so you can go to college. And we have tuition reimbursement, and we will help you on that. And to them, that was, you know, again, that investment in them as a long-term employee in person.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our panelists. I'm now going to turn the panel discussion over for public comment. Thank you to our CAC members for your questions. I'm now going to open up for public comment. Public commenters are reminded to please adhere to our commitment to civil engagement, as well as our Designed Team Alliance, which are both available in our agenda. I am going to restrict the public comment to 3 minutes each. And I do see one hand raised at the present time, Kathleen Finnegan.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair Zelig. I have some questions about hiring practice because of the fact that there seem to be some significant failures in this process. When we're talking about screening an applicant for the things you are mentioning here, impulse control, attention to safety, stress tolerance, and psychological testing in general. I think that there's no reason I can understand why Deputy Gelhaus was on patrol with a weapon, because he already had proven that he was unreliable by pulling his weapon on a guy he had pulled over for not signaling changing lanes. He approached that driver with the gun pointed at him. And the opinion of those people in that car said, the one person said, he's going to kill somebody. The driver of the car reported that to the deputy's superior, and nothing ever happened until Andy Lopez got killed. Another case, Charlie Blount, I think was known. So this is disciplinary and hiring. Charlie Blount was known to have lied in testimony, and nothing was ever done. These are the kinds of police officers who are causing problems. They haven't been screened out. They haven't been disciplined properly. They haven't been given the treatment necessary, or they haven't been let go when they are not capable of carrying out their jobs properly. And we're talking about, I understand everybody's First Amendment rights and all this other stuff. I'm talking about human life and what happens when a law enforcement officer is out of control. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Finnegan. The next individual that I will, let me see, I lost him. Oh, there. Allegra Wilson. Allegra Wilson, if you can please give public comments. I will begin the 3 minutes when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks so much for this presentation tonight. You guys have had some really interesting and thoughtful panelists. Margot Fraser, especially, very, very cool. I want to just provide some feedback. First of all, I would just say, as you were talking through, as I think Officer Dunn was talking through using the different disqualification reasons, it struck me that he used a woman's partner as an example of disqualifying reason, and then everything else was something that a person actually did. So I just think the optics on that were sort of, it raised my eyebrows. I also would love to know whether the sheriff's office is using any application or interview questions relating to racial justice or bias or inclusion as you're actually talking to candidates. Is that something that you talk with them about openly and have that conversation? I think more details we would love to know. I as a member of the public would have loved to have more details on what investigation there is into white supremacist ties beyond internet checks. And then I also just want to say that another thought that occurred to me is that I wonder if the current sheriff's politicization of the office of the sheriff or bullying of women in the community has had an impact on any potential applicants, because it certainly wouldn't feel necessarily safe with those things going on that we're all aware of. So that's what I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do want to just let everybody know, and the public comment part of our discussions is not necessarily a question and answer. So we're not allowed to go back and forth and answer those questions at this time. However, any questions that you mail to the CAC or email, we will follow up and try to follow up with our presenters and get you answers if they are communicated to us. So we will try to follow up on these and communicate back with you, even though we may not do so at the public comment section. The next public commenter, Tony Winter.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity once again. And I actually have a question, so maybe I'll put it in email too, but it's partly a comment too, and it's regarding the culture of law enforcement in general. And law enforcement in the United States was born in the era of slavery and has continued some of those prejudicial biases in how law enforcement is carried out. And I'm curious how the sheriff's office is making an effort to deal with that history internally, because there's so much conversation externally in society at this point I'm wondering if there's any formal conversation in the sheriff's department about that history and the way it influences the way the sheriff's department approaches the public to combat that culture of white supremacy that is unfortunately a big part of our law enforcement history in the US. So I'll submit that by email too, but I'm very curious to know how the sheriff's department is dealing with that national conversation we're having about white supremacy in law enforcement. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. The next individual for public comment is Michael Titone. Or Titone?
Hey, it's Titone.
Titone, thank you, Michael.
So, yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to hear more about an investigation into what the sheriff's office is doing to combat white supremacy for officers who've already been hired. I think that is, something that is in the public's interest to know about. So anything that the IOLERA or the CAC can do to bring that discussion more to the public eye would be great. I believe that, talking about background checks in the context of police brutality, sometimes you have instances of police brutality that have happened that are, there's an ongoing lawsuit that's happening. The officer may still be hired. Are those types of incidents included in background checks? Do those things get looked into, and are they considered a criteria for not hiring an officer? Or does there have to be a settlement or a disciplinary action or a criminal charge for it to be considered? I believe that I think that the issue of white supremacist affiliation is really important, and background checks for social media, that should definitely be a criteria for not hiring someone, and it contributes to the culture of police departments. Talking about the culture of police departments, I think someone asked a question about that, and they may have been concerned as well as me about the culture of the department considering the culture of the department in terms of racism and the possibility of it being a boys' club. So definitely want the sheriff's office to be sensitive to those issues when they're considering that kind of question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next and looks like our final speaker for public comment will be Diana Anglero.
Hello.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. I just kind of had a comment, and I'm just a mama of 5 children. I raised 5 biracial children here, and they got profiled and criminalized and thrown in prison. And I can't describe to you, what happened, but all I want to say is, like my father served the Army, my son's in the Marines, and my mother was a 25-year probation officer in Alameda County. We are outstanding individuals, and the qualifications that you listed, none of us would qualify, but yet I have a Marine son. And like I said, my father died for this country, and it really bothers me because if you keep those requirements, that's old school. Like I come from Forestville, K through 12, my kids grew there, and the KKK's there, there's a mile down the road, the KKK fort that nobody talks about, the Confederate fort, it's still there, it's still prevalent, and I love everybody. And so I'm just hoping that all of you can realize we have a serious, serious problem of racism, profiling, and criminalization of our poor Black children, biracial children, and Mexican children. And please, please open your eyes and begin to see what is happening to our children, because my life has been destroyed. I just sent one to Arizona, one's in the Marines, one's up in CAS. I had to separate us because the police came so often. I called 200 times for help, and my sick poor mama, I just got finished taking care of for 5 years because she died of dementia after the police wouldn't protect us for 5 years because our racist neighbor came with his backhoe and destroyed our land. And then the white fucking real estate agent came and stole my mama's mine. And so I took care of my mama for 5 years, 24/7. And all I want to tell you is that I still love everybody. And I still believe in Sonoma County. It is too beautiful to forget. There's too many wonderful people here. And Scott Dunn, please quit, because I know you're probably the most wonderful person in the world, but you're failing. And I just want people here that truly love everybody. And I can't really tell. Everybody got a story, but they don't have my story. You're not telling the people's story. There's a woman around the corner. I just set up cameras and I videotaped. I can send it to you all. Perpetrators. She was kidnapped when she was 6. I'm filming him. Y'all helped him. He's out. We're all suffering. You're not doing anything. Please, please help. That's it.
Thank you.
In a
very much.
nutshell.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, I am now going to close agenda number 3 and the public comment relating to our presentation on Sheriff's Department hiring, diversity, and discipline. I would like to thank very much Margot Frazier, Marina Luna, and Lieutenant Scott Dunn for your presentations today and for providing the information that you have regarding this topic. I'll excuse you all now so that we can go to public comment generally for the CAC. You're more than welcome to stay on and join if you'd like, but if not, we thank you very much for joining us. And if we do have follow-up questions, you may get some emails from us in the near future. Thank you very, very much for attending and for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so now moving on to agenda item number 4. This is for public comments for items not appearing on the agenda, but within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the CAC. When giving public comments in this regard, please state your name and who you represent, if any organization or business. Comments are limited at the discretion of the chairs. We will limit the public comment this evening to 2 minutes for anybody giving public comment generally. The reason we're limiting that is just because of the time of this evening's CAC meeting. Now I will open up for public comment generally. Okay, I actually do not see anybody raising their hands to give public comment. I will wait a couple more seconds. Okay, 2 our attendees joining us today. Oh, I do see a public commenter, Ms. Anglero. I will go ahead and Ms. Anglero, you are able to speak for 2 minutes. Again, this is for not any topic of tonight's discussions, but the CAC jurisdiction generally. Please go ahead with your 2-minute comment.
I just want to tell everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to tell everybody, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And whatever you could do to help the people, you know, at the very bottom, just please, please help us. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Ms. Finnegan, go ahead when you have a chance. You will have 2 minutes to speak for public comment generally.
Thank you again. As long as I've stuck it out this long, I do have another question, and that it has to do with the comparing the style of CAC meetings as they were when this department or agency was first formed and how it works now. Previously, there was a great deal more community participation, and it was welcomed, it was invited, and that does not seem to be the case now. We would always have a chance as members of the public to ask questions and have dialogue with panel members who were coming to speak. And it's a terrific loss that I think any of us who have ever been to Isle Aero CAC meetings beforehand in the old days would say, you know, would agree. I would like for this group to consider being more sensitive to the public and giving greater opportunity for dialogue, not just a 2 or 3 minute comment, but real dialogue about issues that are important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finnegan. I do not see any more hands raised for tonight's public comment, so I will close agenda item number 4, general public comment. And with that, we will adjourn our CAC meeting for August. Our next meeting, let me double check, for September. That meeting is going to be, hold on. I know it's a different day. That meeting is going to be on Monday, September 13th. The first Monday of September is a holiday, so we have moved our September meeting to the 13th. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Again, for any members of our public who wish to speak with us or communicate with us between now and then, please email us, and we are more than happy to address any issues that you send us by email if we can. Other than that, thank you to our members for joining us today. And I do look forward to seeing you next week. I would also say that I do want to remind everybody that sometimes our meetings are like they were today, where we have panelists presenting and the public comment. Other times we do have public forums where they are much more open to the question and answer type style. We do switch off depending on our panelists and the topic that we are doing. We do try to engage our public as much as possible. If you would like to offer any comments between now and the next meeting, please email us. We're more than happy to speak with you. Call us, write to us. We are certainly wanting to hear from you, and we'll do everything we can to address any issues, questions, or concerns. So thank you very much. And Adriana, yes.
I had one thing to say.
Yeah.
It was a housekeeping item for our members. I sent you an email, I think it was Friday, with regard to outreach, a very important part of our work. And we have opportunities to do outreach. I have opportunities in actually all of the districts of the county, but there may be additional thoughts that you have that you want to bring outreach to. Marcy had a really great idea that had to do with the meeting that she's involved in and doing some outreach there, talking about Iolero. So before I can nail down these spots that and commit to them, I need commitment from you on which dates you will be available, and I will join you, and we will set up tables and do some outreach. So I wanted to get this wrapped up by the end of next week. And so if you can start looking at your calendars, look at what I sent you, give me other ideas. It doesn't have to be tied to that. We're just opportunities in all of our districts. So get back to me, and then we'll get out there and do some outreach. I've been doing some already, and it's a lot of fun. And a lot of people still do not know who we are and what Iolero does. There are people that don't even know how to throw a Frisbee, and we have Frisbees to give to them. And I'm surprised that people don't know what to do with them. So let's get out there. And so get back to me, look at your calendars, and then let's get out and do some outreach.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We will talk soon. And this meeting is adjourned for tonight. Bye, everybody.